The look only lasted 3 seconds. 3 seconds to turn a marriage into a crime scene. They didn't just steal my future. They were plotting to steal my past. My husband thought he erased me. But he forgot one thing: I am the daughter of a woman who taught me how to bury secrets. My name is Alara. The 3 o'clock bell at Riverbend Elementary always rang with a specific kind of chaotic energy, a wave of noise and small bodies that signaled the end of my workday. As a freelance interior designer, my schedule was a frantic mix of client demands and color palettes, but this moment, this pickup, was the fixed point of my day. I leaned against the warm metal of my car, the air thick with school bus exhaust and the dusty smell of the playground's wood chips. I was mentally planning dinner, debating chicken versus pasta, and making a note to check my son Leo's math homework. The static of the crowd broke, and I saw him. Not Leo, my husband, Miles. A cold shock, sharp and immediate, shot through my chest. Miles was supposed to be in Chicago. He was meant to be giving a presentation for Ethelred Capital, a 2-day trip. But he was here, standing by the ancient oak tree near the teacher's lot, looking as polished and charismatic as ever in his gray wool blazer. He was laughing. It wasn't his polite client laugh. It was a deep, relaxed laugh, the kind I hadn't heard directed at me in months. He was with a teacher. I recognized her vaguely from a parent-teacher night. Ms. Croft. Sarah Croft. She was young, pretty, and very pregnant. As I watched, frozen, she placed a hand on the high, tight swell of her stomach. And then, Miles placed his hand over hers. He covered her hand completely, his thumb stroking the back of her knuckles. It was not a gesture of friendship. It was a gesture of ownership. The world didn't fade. It shattered. The screaming children, the bus horns, the other parents waving hello. It all became a flat, meaningless backdrop to that single devastating gesture. The business trips, the dinners that ran past midnight, the new, sterile distance he cloaked in the excuse of market volatility. It was all a lie, a meticulous, suffocating, life-altering lie. Mommy, I snapped my head around. Leo, my 7-year-old son, was barreling toward me, his backpack bouncing wildly, his face bright with the simple joy of dismissal. He was completely, beautifully oblivious. I couldn't breathe. I forced my facial muscles into a shape that I hoped looked like a smile. "Hey, buddy, did you have a good day?" My hands trembled as I fumbled with his booster seat buckle. I got in the driver's seat, the smell of the leather interior suddenly making me sick. The 10-minute drive home passed in a distorted, silent haze. Leo chattered about a spelling test and a classmate who ate glue. I just gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white, nodding at the empty sound of his voice. I waited until 9. Leo was asleep, his breathing soft and even over the baby monitor. The front door opened. Miles walked in, loosening his tie. "Hey," he said, feigning surprise. "You're still up." My voice came out thin, unrecognizable. "How was Chicago long?" He sighed, heading for the kitchen. "You know these conferences, all spreadsheets and bad hotel coffee. You missed your flight," I stated. He paused, his back to me. "What? No. Just landed an hour ago. Traffic from the airport was a nightmare. I saw you, Miles, at the school, with her." He turned around slowly. His first expression was not guilt. It was annoyance. "Alara, what are you talking about? You're not making sense." He even tried a small, condescending laugh. "You've been working too hard on that new client's house. You're stressed. You're imagining things." The gaslighting was so immediate, so practiced, it almost made me doubt my own sanity. Almost. I held up my phone. I had taken one picture, a single blurry shot, captured in the agonizing second before Leo had reached me. It was blurry, but the image was clear. His hand, her belly. The mask did not slip. It dropped. The charming, concerned husband vanished. In his place was a stranger, polished and cold and utterly ruthless. So, he said. He walked past me to the bar cart and poured himself a whiskey. You know, she's pregnant. It came out as a whisper. Yes, our marriage. Miles, we have a son. We built a life. He took a long sip, swirling the ice. This marriage, Alara, was a convenient arrangement. It worked for a while. Now it doesn't. He looked at me, his eyes devoid of any emotion I recognized. I found someone who actually understands me. Someone who fits the life I'm building. What are you saying? I'm saying you need to leave. A sharp, hysterical laugh escaped my throat. Leave. This is my home, Miles. This is our home. I designed this kitchen. He looked at me then, not with anger, but with a flat, dismissive pity. Ilara, this house doesn't belong to us. It belongs to the firm. It's a corporate asset. He gestured vaguely to the driveway. Your car is a corporate lease. The joint accounts, the savings you're so proud of. It's all tied to Ethelred. That's not possible, I whispered, the floor tilting beneath me. You signed the papers, he said, his voice calm, as if discussing the weather. When we refinanced 2 years ago, that mortgage paperwork you were too busy to read. He took another drink. You always said you trusted me with the finances. I stared at him. The man I loved, the father of my child. He wasn't just ending our marriage. He was liquidating me. The next 48 hours were not a slow unraveling. They were a controlled demolition. Miles was gone when I woke up. His suit, his shoes, his dop kit, all vanished as if he had never slept there. I tried to buy groceries for Leo's breakfast, just milk, eggs, and bread. The joint debit card was declined. I tried the Visa. Declined. I tried the American Express that Miles insisted I use for my design business expenses. Declined. The cashier looked at me with that tired, judgmental pity I recognized. I left the full cart by the register and walked out into the bright morning, my face hot with shame. When I returned to the house, an email was waiting. It was from the Harrington Group, my single largest client, the Penthouse Project, the one Miles had secured for me at a firm gala. The contract was terminated, effective immediately. The words on the screen were sterile, corporate, and brutal. Significant financial malpractice. Gross irregularities in billing. It was a lie, a clean, vicious lie. I itemized every single purchase, down to the last antique drawer pull. Miles knew my billing system. He had designed it. This wasn't just ending my contract, it was poisoning my professional reputation. I was still staring at the screen, my mind numb, when I heard the beeping, a heavy, rhythmic beep. A tow truck was backing into the driveway. I ran outside, my heart pounding in my throat. A man in greasy overalls was already hooking my SUV. Stop! What are you doing? That's my car! He didn't even look at me. He just gestured with his clipboard. Orders right here. Ma'am, Ethelred Capital. Lease termination. But my son's car seat is in there. His toys. My laptop is in the trunk. You've got 3 minutes to get what you need, he said, not unkindly. I just follow the work order. I scrambled into the back seat, fumbling with the car seat buckles, grabbing the backpack and my laptop bag. I stood on the sidewalk, clutching Leo's booster seat, and watched him tow away my mobility, my independence. I needed cash. I still had my personal savings, the account I had opened before I even met Miles, the money I had earned from my first design jobs. I took an Uber to the bank. The teller, a young woman I didn't recognize, typed in my account number. Her smile faltered. She called over a manager. I'm sorry, Mrs. Vaughn, the manager said, his voice low and official. Your account has been frozen. Frozen why? That is my personal account? There is a pending fraud investigation initiated by our corporate risk department. Ethelred Capital's logo was etched into the glass partition behind him. They didn't just have a relationship with this bank, they owned a significant stake in it. He wasn't just freezing my assets. He was labeling me a criminal. I stumbled home. I had to call someone. I called Jessica, my best friend since college, the one who was Leo's godmother. Straight to voicemail. Jess, please. Something terrible is happening. Miles, just please call me. I called our mutual friends, Mark and Lisa, the couple we hosted for dinner just 2 weeks ago. No answer. I tried 3 more people. Not one picked up. The silence was absolute. He had gotten to them first. While I was worried about deadlines and dinner parties, he had been busy, calmly and methodically planting the seeds, painting me as unstable, paranoid, emotionally overwrought. By the time I realized I was under attack, he had already neutralized all my allies. The next morning, a courier knocked on the door. He handed me a long, official-looking envelope. It wasn't from Miles. It was from a law firm I didn't recognize. It was a formal eviction notice. The property was an asset of Ethelred Capital, and my residency was terminated. I had 72 hours to vacate. As I stood there, the paper trembling in my hand, my laptop pinged. An email. The sender's address was Scroft Arriverbend, Edu. The subject line was blank. The message was only one line. For Leo's sake, Alara, please accept reality and go quietly. A threat wrapped in the language of a concerned educator. I had one last call to make. I used the last $200 in my wallet to pay the retainer for the best divorce attorney I could find who would see me immediately. I sat in his plush office, feeling like an imposter. I explained the timeline, the bank, the car, the house. He listened, his face grim. Ilara, he said, I need to ask you, did you sign any financial agreements after your marriage? No, I said. Nothing. We refinanced the house a couple of years ago. Miles said we were getting a better interest rate. It was a big stack of papers. He said it was just standard. He closed his eyes for a second, then turned to his computer. He typed for a few moments. He was a member of the bar. He had access. He pulled up the county records. He found the document. He turned the monitor toward me. This, he said, pointing to the screen, is not a mortgage refinancing application. This is a post-nuptial agreement. I leaned in, scanning the dense legal text. I saw my signature on the bottom, and I saw the clauses. In the event of dissolution of the marriage, I waived any and all claims to real estate, financial accounts, trusts, and corporate assets held jointly or individually by Miles Vaughn or his associated entities. He told me I was signing mortgage papers. I whispered. He tricked you, the lawyer said, his voice flat. It's ironclad. Alara, you have nothing. He didn't just leave you. He erased you. The eviction notice gave me 72 hours. I spent them packing. It turns out that a decade of my life, my marriage, and my career fit neatly into 2 rolling suitcases, one for me, one for Leo. I took his favorite stuffed bear, my laptop, and the few pieces of jewelry that I had owned before I met Miles. I left the custom-designed furniture I had sourced, the silk rugs, the library of art books, the framed photographs of a life that was now a complete fabrication. I left it all. It wasn't mine. It had never been mine. We had nowhere to go. My friends were gone. My bank accounts were frozen. I was a non-person. And then, in the fog of panic, I remembered. There was one thing. One single asset that Miles hadn't known about, or perhaps hadn't cared enough to investigate. A property I had inherited 3 years ago from my grandmother Iris, a woman I had met maybe 5 times. She was an eccentric recluse who smelled of old paper and peppermint. She had left me the only thing she owned, a failed, crumbling bookstore in Beacon, New York. I used the last of the physical cash in my wallet, just under $300, to buy 2 one-way tickets at the Port Authority bus terminal. The ride was 8 hours long. Leo, confused but trusting, asked why we were going on an adventure without Dad. I told him it was a special trip, just for us. He fell asleep with his head on my lap, his breath warm against my jeans, while I watched the dark highway slide by, my own reflection a pale, hollow-eyed ghost in the rain-streaked glass. We arrived in Beacon just after midnight. The bus hissed to a stop, dumping us on a deserted main street. The rain was torrential, a cold driving sheet that soaked us instantly. I dragged our suitcases 2 blocks to the address, the Scribe's Nook. It was worse than my vague childhood memories. The charming painted sign I remembered was now cracked and faded, half the letters missing. The main display window wasn't just dirty, it was boarded over with a sheet of gray plywood. As I fumbled with the ancient, rusted lock, a smell hit me sharp, acidic, the smell of mildew and wet, decaying paper. The small apartment above the shop was our refuge. I flipped a switch by the door. A single bare bulb flickered on, illuminating a cramped space thick with dust. The air was colder inside than it was out. I tried the radiator. It was ice cold. I went to the small kitchen sink and turned the faucet. The pipes groaned, then sputtered out a thin stream of dark, rust-colored water. This was it. This was rock bottom. I found a stack of old blankets in a closet, shook the dust off them, and tucked Leo, still half asleep, into the musty-smelling bed. I covered him with my own coat. The next few days were a blur of cold and quiet humiliation. I took Leo to the local elementary school to enroll him. The secretary was polite, but her eyes were curious. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Vaughn," she said, tapping at her computer. "There seems to be a hold on your son's transfer records from his previous district." A hold. A word Miles would use. A clean, administrative word to stop me in my tracks. On the 3rd day, my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. My stomach tightened. I answered. "Ilara." His voice was smooth, casual, as if he were calling to check on dinner reservations. "Miles." "I hear Beacon is nice this time of year," he said. A bit rustic, I imagine. "How are you and Leo settling in?" He knew. Of course he knew. He was tracking me. The cold I felt had nothing to do with the apartment's lack of heat. "What do you want?" My voice was a dry whisper. "Just concerned," he said, a silken, false sympathy in his tone. "I'm worried about Leo. You know how these small-town services are. Child Protective Services. They tend to get very concerned about unstable living conditions. No heat, for example. No steady income. It would be a terrible, terrible shame if someone had to make a call." The threat hung in the air, a perfectly aimed dagger. He wasn't just content to leave me with nothing. He was coming for my son. That night, the despair became a physical weight. It was a suffocating presence in the dark, cold room. I sat on the cracked linoleum floor, my arms wrapped around my knees, listening to Leo's soft breathing. I was trapped. I had nothing to fight with. I was weeping, silent, dry sobbing in the freezing air. When I realized I was fighting for the wrong thing. I wasn't fighting for the house, or the money, or the past. I was fighting for the small, warm boy sleeping in that bed. I had to move. I had to do something. I started cleaning, not to make it livable, but just to keep my hands from shaking. I started in Iris's bedroom, a space that looked like it hadn't been touched in years. It was filled with boxes of unsorted books and stacks of yellowed newspapers. I was dragging a heavy, moldering steamer trunk away from the wall when my foot caught on a loose floorboard. It wasn't just loose. It had been intentionally cut. My fingers, numb with cold, fumbled at the edge. I pried it up. Beneath it, resting on the dark, dusty joist, was a single cloth-bound book. It was an old-fashioned accounting ledger. I opened it. It wasn't a diary. It wasn't Iris's personal thoughts. It was page after page of neat, precise handwriting, dates, cryptic abbreviations, and long strings of numbers. It was meticulous, it was cold, and I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, This was not a record of book sales. I spent the rest of the night by that single buzzing bulb, the ledger open on the warped kitchen table. The cold from the floor seeped into my bones, but I didn't feel it. I was consumed. The entries were a meticulous cipher, initials I didn't recognize, amounts listed in simple thousands, 50K, 120K, followed by a reference to a book, Hemingway, Son, also, 1926, Orwell, 1984, First Am. It was a code, and the key was the shop downstairs. My memory of Grandmother Iris was thin, built from a handful of childhood visits. My mother had always dismissed her as peculiar, the strange, silent woman who preferred the company of dusty books to family. I remembered a tall, gaunt woman with iron gray hair in a tight bun, her hands always stained with ink. She smelled like old paper and peppermint. I'd thought her a lonely, sad recluse. But looking at the precision of this ledger, the decades of careful, cryptic entries, I realized peculiar was the wrong word. Methodical was better. Disciplined was closer. Dangerous was a word that now whispered at the edge of my mind. She once told me, the last time I saw her, "Read what isn't written on the page. Alara, the margins always tell the real story." I had smiled and nodded, a teenager eager to get back to the city, dismissing it as the rambling of an old woman. Now, I understood. I turned a page, and my blood froze. The entry was near the bottom, dated just 4 years ago, shortly after she died. It was just 2 words, but they screamed at me. Ethelred Capital, my husband's firm, the company that had owned my house, my car, my life, the company that was now trying to take my son. My eyes scanned the line. There was no monetary amount, just a reference, Austin P&P 1894. I scrambled down the rickety stairs to the shop floor. The air was thick and heavy. The smell of damp and decay was suffocating. I found an old flashlight in a drawer by the silent cash register, its beam a weak, yellow circle in the oppressive dark. The shelves were towering, chaotic messes, books piled sideways, spines cracked, pages swollen with humidity. I found the fiction section, running the beam of light over the spines. Alcott, Asimov, Austen. My fingers, numb and clumsy, traced the titles, Sense and Sensibility, Emma, and then, pushed back, almost hidden behind a stack of moldering paperbacks, I saw it, a dark, forest green cloth binding, Pride and Prejudice. The gold leaf lettering on the spine was faint, but the date was clear, 1894. My heart was a fist in my throat. I pulled the book from the shelf. It was heavier than it looked. I fumbled it open, the inside front cover. It had been modified. Iris, with her precise, steady hands, had glued a small, buff-colored envelope to the thick cardstock. It was sealed with a circle of dark red wax, stamped with a simple letter, I. My breath was shallow. I broke the seal with my fingernail, my hands shaking so violently I almost ripped the contents. Inside were 2 items. The first was a key. It was long, slender, and looked ancient, made of dull brass with a complex, circular head. A 5-digit number was stamped into the metal. It was a safe deposit box key. The second was a single sheet of heavy cream stationery, folded twice. I unfolded it. On it was Iris's perfect, sharp handwriting. Alara, it began. If you are reading this, the fox is in the hen house. Do not trust their smiles. Your husband did not find you by accident. I read the words again and again. Your husband did not find you by accident. The floor seemed to drop away. The art gala, the chance meeting. I was a junior designer, just starting, overwhelmed by the wealth and power in the room. He was Miles Vaughn, a charismatic, handsome rising star at Ethelred, who, accidentally, spilled a glass of champagne on me. He was so apologetic. He was so charming. He insisted on taking me to dinner to make up for it. It was a setup. My entire marriage, my entire life, my son. It was all based on a calculated, predatory lie. He had been sent to find me. He had targeted me. But why I looked around the dark, collapsing bookstore, a graveyard of forgotten stories. For this pile of rubble and debt, it made no sense. Miles operated in a world of skyscrapers and offshore accounts. This place was worthless. I realized, my blood turning to ice, that I had misunderstood. The inheritance wasn't the building. The inheritance wasn't the books. The shop was just the lockbox. I picked up the key again, turning it over in the weak flashlight beam. Attached to the head with a small wire ring was a tiny metal tag. I had to squint to read the engraved text. It was not a local bank. It wasn't Chase or Wells Fargo. It was 2 words, Häuser and See. And below that, one more, Zurich. A private Swiss bank. My grandmother, the reclusive bookseller, had a vault in Switzerland. She wasn't a gatekeeper, she was a ghost. And she had just handed me a gun. The key was a piece of useless brass. It was a key to a vault in Switzerland, but I was a prisoner in Beacon, New York. Miles's phone call had been a statement of fact I was under surveillance. I couldn't enroll my son in school. I couldn't access my bank account. If I so much as Googled flights to Zurich, I had no doubt that a black SUV would pull up to the curb, and the threat against Leo would become a reality. I was tagged, and the digital fence around me was absolute, but I still had my skills. And I still had a few $100s in cash, before my life was reduced to this. I was a high-end interior designer. I knew how to source rare Italian marble, 18th century fixtures, and artisan textiles from across the world. I knew about discreet couriers, secure payments, and how to find people who specialized in moving valuable things quietly. I took my laptop to the small cafe down the street, paid cash for a coffee, and used their public Wi-Fi. It took 2 hours, sifting through encrypted forums and international logistics sites, but I found what I needed, a discreet asset retrieval service operating out of Geneva. Their website was sterile, professional, and promised absolute confidentiality. It was impossibly risky. It cost me almost every dollar I had left, wired in 4 small, separate transactions from a local convenience store, a process that made me feel like a criminal. I packaged Iris's key in a padded envelope and sent it via international express mail, praying it wouldn't be flagged, praying it wasn't all a scam. I was sending the only weapon I had to a complete stranger. The wait was a new kind of torture. Every day. I took Leo to the park, forcing smiles, my stomach churning with anxiety. To stay sane, I returned to Iris's ledger. I needed to understand. Why my reclusive, strange grandmother. I went back to the library, using their archives. I started cross-referencing the initials and dates from the ledger with old newspaper articles about New York's financial elite. It didn't take long. A name emerged: Randolph Thomas Harriman, the deceased founder of Ethelred Capital. Ethelred, the name on my husband's business card, the name on my eviction notice. Then I found Iris, not as a bookseller. I found a small, grainy photograph in a 1970s Society column about a charity gala. The caption read, Mr. Randolph Harriman with his personal secretary, Miss Iris Vance. She had been on the inside. She had been his right hand. I kept digging. I found a record of a lawsuit from decades ago. Vance v. Ethelred Capital. Wrongful termination. The case had been dismissed almost immediately, sealed and buried. They had fired her, discredited her. But Iris hadn't just crawled away to die. She had come here, and she had brought her insurance. 12 days after I sent the key, a package arrived at the post office, held for general delivery under my maiden name. It was a simple brown envelope with a German postmark. Inside was no note, just a stack of documents and a single black encrypted hard drive. I couldn't risk the apartment's Wi-Fi. I couldn't risk my own laptop. I took Leo back to the library, set him up in the children's section with a stack of picture books, and found a computer terminal in the farthest, most private corner. My back was to the wall. I could see everyone who entered. I plugged in the hard drive. A password prompt appeared. I typed Iris's birthday. Access denied. I typed Ethelred, denied. I looked at the key I still had in my pocket, the key to the bookstore. Then I looked at the brass key I had photographed before sending it. The 5-digit number stamped on the head. I typed in the number. The drive mounted. It wasn't a diary. It was a corporate guillotine. Iris, with her meticulous secretarial skills, had created a perfect shadow ledger. It was all there. Decades of Ethelred's crimes, spreadsheets detailing money laundering through shell companies in the Caymans, scanned bank records showing bribes to politicians, judges, regulators, audio files of board meetings that were never meant to be recorded. It was a complete, annotated history of their corruption. My mind was reeling. This was it. This was the weapon. I was about to copy the files to a secure email account when I saw a final folder. It was named Project Ilara. My blood ran cold. I clicked it. It wasn't financial data. It was me. It was a full dossier, starting from my sophomore year of college. Photographs of me, taken from a distance, walking on campus. A copy of my undergraduate transcripts. A psychological profile. A background check on my parents. And then, the medical records. My medical records. A gynecological report from a routine checkup, 3 years before I even met Miles. Iris had somehow gotten a copy. A single line was highlighted in the file, patient shows high fertility markers. I didn't understand. Why would they care? I clicked the next file. It was another set of medical records. These belonged to Sarah Croft, a specialist's report from a New York clinic. Significant uterine scarring from early onset endometriosis. It read, "Patient is clinically infertile." The pieces began to click into place, forming a picture so monstrous I couldn't breathe. Sarah Croft wasn't just a teacher. I found a family tree document. She was Sarah Harriman Croft, the daughter of Ethelred's current CEO. Her pregnancy. It wasn't hers. I found the contracts. A surrogate, paid handsomely. Then, the last file. A single-page memo, from the CEO to Miles. Subject Project Ilara. The asset is the bookstore, left to the granddaughter. Iris's insurance is there. We cannot move on it while she lives. Your assignment is to secure the granddaughter, control the asset, and produce a viable heir. Upon her death, we take the bookstore. My marriage wasn't a lie. It was a corporate infiltration. Miles hadn't been recruited to be a husband. He was recruited to be a breeder and a burglar. My love, my life, my son. It was all just a hostile takeover. And I was the last firewall. I sat in the plastic library chair, the cheap fluorescent light humming overhead. The revelation of Project Ilara washed over me, not as a hot wave of grief, but as a chilling, clarifying freeze. My marriage, my love. The past 10 years of my life, it was all a long con, a decade-long corporate assignment. The man I had shared a bed with, the father of my child, was an operative. The love I thought was my anchor was the chain. The home I designed was the prison. The fear that had paralyzed me in the cold apartment was gone, burned away by a pure glacial rage. I was no longer a victim. I was a survivor of a war I hadn't known I was fighting, and now I had the armory. My fingers clicked on the mouse. I navigated back to the main directory of the drive, a folder labeled Audio. I put on the library's grimy headphones, wiping them first on my sleeve. The files were old, the static thick, but Iris's secretarial skill was evident. She had labeled them by date and attendees. I clicked on one from 2 years ago. The voices were clear. I heard Sarah's father, the CEO. I heard the Ethelred legal counsel. "She's a liability," the CEO said. His voice was the cultivated, smooth baritone of old money. "This bookstore? She's sitting on a powder keg. She's an old woman," the lawyer replied, sounding bored. "She has no proof, just paper." "I don't care," the CEO snapped. "She has been quiet for too long. If she so much as calls a reporter, We neutralize her. Permanently. Handle it. Neutralize. The word echoed in the cheap headphones. I remembered the phone call. My mother. Crying. Ilara. It's Iris. She had an accident. They said she fell down the stairs in that awful, dark shop. It wasn't a trip. It wasn't an accident. They had murdered her. They had killed my grandmother to get to the paper they thought was rotting in her walls, never knowing she had already sent the real weapon to Switzerland. The entire conspiracy laid itself bare in my mind, a grotesque, perfect blueprint. They knew Iris had their secrets. They just didn't know where. They assumed it was physical, buried somewhere in the 50,000 volumes of decaying books. They couldn't storm the place. So they targeted her only heir, me. They sent Miles, their polished, handsome asset, to acquire me. He married me. He isolated me from my family. He had me sign the postnup, disguised as a mortgage. And he fathered Leo, the viable heir, the biological link that would give him, and by extension, Ethelred, a claim to the property after my inevitable removal. Sarah Croft, the CEO's barren daughter, provided the emotional cover, the true love that would justify the divorce. The surrogate pregnancy was just the final, cruel piece of theater, an anchor to bind Miles to the Harriman dynasty forever. They had planned for everything except the one thing they couldn't possibly understand, the meticulous, patient fury of a wronged secretary. They thought Iris was a lonely old woman. They never imagined she was a grandmaster, moving pieces on a global board. My fingers flew across the keyboard. If they were this thorough, they would have contingencies. I dug deeper into the financial files, cross-referencing their known accounts with the shadow ledgers Iris had kept. And there it was, a discrepancy, a hole, a series of encrypted transfers, moving money from Ethelred's Cayman shell companies to another, unidentified account. It was brilliant, subtle skimming. Miles. He wasn't just a loyal soldier. He was a parasite feeding on his masters. He was stealing millions from the people who had hired him. He was playing his own game. The fool, the arrogant, greedy fool. A new, cold calculation settled over me. I didn't just have leverage against Ethelred. I had a separate, specific knife to place at my husband's throat. I couldn't walk into the FBI. Not yet. I was still the unstable wife, a fugitive from a corporate-owned world. I needed an ally, a weaponized, anonymous ally. I opened a new browser tab. I created a new, untraceable email account through a secure, encrypted service. I went back to the hard drive and found a clean, undeniable piece of evidence, a scanned memo and a 30-second audio file detailing Ethelred's illegal bribe to a sitting U.S. senator. It was perfect. It wasn't connected to Iris, and it wasn't connected to me. It was just pure high-level crime. I found the contact page for Jackson Cole. His reputation was sterling. An old-school investigative journalist who had toppled 2 Fortune 500 companies. I attached the files. My subject line was simple. Ethelred Capital. They own him. I hit send. I expected to wait for days, maybe weeks. I expected silence. My laptop pinged less than 5 minutes later. The reply was from Cole himself. It's been over a year. I was wondering when I'd hear from you again. Tell me what you need. My breath hitched. I typed. I don't know what you mean. This is the first time I've contacted you. His response was immediate. Don't play games. The last package came from Beacon. The old woman. She was preparing me for this, feeding me the background for 2 years. She called this the Black Ledger. She said the final proof would come. I take it you're the proof. Iris hadn't just left me a map. She had already fielded the army. Jackson Cole and I spent the next 24 hours building a fortress of code around our communication. He guided me through setting up nested VPNs, onion routing, and a dead drop system on a server he trusted. For the first time, I wasn't just a designer. I was an asset. You need to understand what you're holding. Ilara. He wrote over the secure chat. His words were stark. No pleasantries. Ethelred Capital isn't just a corrupt firm. They are a shadow bank. They move money for people who don't officially exist. Senators are on their payroll. Judges. I've been chipping at the edges of this for 5 years, but every time I get close, the story dies. Witnesses recant. Evidence vanishes. They are untouchable. They killed my grandmother, I typed. They're trying to take my son. I don't care who they are. I want them to burn. Good, he replied. Anger is a motivator. Now, I need something I can use, something that bypasses their usual network of protection. I need a direct, undeniable felony, something they can't bury by calling in a favor. I knew exactly what to send. I went back to the audio files, the one I had found earlier, the bribe. But I listened again, this time with a colder ear. It wasn't just a bribe to a senator. It was Miles and Sarah's father, the CEO, bragging about it. They named the senator. They named the bill he was going to kill. They named the offshore account where the consulting fee was being paid. It was arrogant, it was sloppy, and it was perfect. I isolated the 2-minute audio file and sent it to Jackson. The reply came 3 hours later. I'm in. I'm taking this to a friend. Not police. Federal. Southern District of New York. They're the only ones with the muscle in the jurisdiction. Don't go anywhere. Don't talk to anyone. Don't even buy groceries if you can help it. Wait. Waiting was the hardest part. I spent 2 days in that freezing apartment with Leo, reading him the same picture books from the library until I had them memorized. Every creak of the old building, every footstep on the street outside, sent a jolt of pure adrenaline through me. Then, the email came. A new, secure address. A diner. Route 9. 4:00 p.m. Friday. Come alone. You'll be met. I found a high school girl on the street and paid her $40 in cash, a significant portion of my remaining funds, to watch Leo at the library for 2 hours. I told her it was a job interview. I walked the 3 miles to the diner. It was a classic 1950s relic, all chrome and cracked vinyl. I slid into a booth in the back corner. At exactly 4:00, a man sat down across from me. He was Asian American, sharp, and wore an impeccably tailored but unremarkable suit. He looked too young to be this imposing. He didn't order anything. My name is David Pham, he said. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the diner's low hum. I'm an assistant United States attorney. He just looked at me. He wasn't friendly. He wasn't reassuring. He was assessing me, and I could tell he was deeply skeptical. Jackson Cole trusts you, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Jackson Cole is a journalist. He chases ghosts, Pham said, his eyes unblinking. He sent me a 2-minute audio clip of men talking. It's interesting, but it could be faked. It could be entrapment, and it comes from a source who is currently in a bitter domestic dispute. You look like a scorned wife trying to weaponize my office. The condescension stung, but I saw the logic in it. I was, on paper, exactly what he said. What you heard, I said, leaning forward, is a rounding error. It's a single drop. I have the entire ocean. I unzipped my bag, pulled out the encrypted hard drive, and slid it across the table. He looked at the drive, then back at me. What is this? It's the Black Ledger. It's everything. It's Ethelred's entire shadow operation, going back 30 years. It's the real accounting. Every bribe, every shell company, every single crime. It's all there, authenticated by the woman who built it. Pham's expression didn't change, but a new stillness came over him. He picked up the drive. You'll come with me. Now. We have a technical team in Poughkeepsie. If you're lying. If this is a waste of my time, I will personally look into having you charged with obstruction. I spent the next 6 hours in a windowless government room. I sat in a hard-backed chair while tech agents I never saw, in a room I couldn't access, tore Iris's drive apart. Pham sat across from me, drinking terrible coffee from a styrofoam cup, saying nothing. At 11:30 p.m., a door opened, A different man, older, in an FBI windbreaker, leaned in and whispered something to Fam. Fam looked at the man. Then he looked at me. The skepticism was gone. It was replaced by something else. Awe, hunger, holy grail, Fam whispered, almost to himself. He stood up and started pacing. This is everything. This isn't just money laundering. They're funding unregistered foreign agents. They're violating sanctions. This is a RICO case. This is a goddamn national security case. He stopped pacing and fixed me with an intense, penetrating gaze. You. Who are you in all this? I'm the woman they tried to erase, I said. I'm the mother they're trying to steal a son from. I'm the granddaughter of the woman they murdered. We'll need you to testify, he said. Grand jury. Maybe a trial. It will be public, and it will be brutal. They will try to destroy you on the stand. I have nothing left to destroy, I said. We can offer you full immunity for any financial benefit you unknowingly received. We can offer you and your son full protection, starting right now. Done, I said. On one condition, I don't want to be protected. I want to be bait. I want them to come for me. I want you to catch them doing it. Fam studied me for a long moment. You're playing a dangerous game. It's the only one I have. He nodded, a slow, grim acceptance. We'll draft the agreements. We'll put a team on you. He paused, looking down at the drive in his hand. You've done the country a service. Mrs. Vaughn. He started to walk out, then stopped at the door. One more thing, he said. It's good we found you. We've actually had a flag on Ethelred for 6 months. Not for this. He tapped the drive. We were looking at Sarah Croft. My stomach tightened. For finances. No, Fam said, his voice dropping. For a disappearance. A junior analyst at Ethelred. He was assigned to the Ilara project, whatever that is. He started asking too many questions about the original asset, about a bookstore in Beacon. He vanished 2 weeks before your grandmother fell down the stairs. Sarah Croft was the last person to meet with him. He looked at me, the final, horrifying piece clicking into place. She's not just a spoiled daughter, Mrs. Vaughn. We think she's the company enforcer. The plan was staged in the cold, dusty apartment above the bookstore. David Fam's team had spent 6 hours sweeping it, replacing the buzzing light bulbs with new ones that contained pinhole cameras, dusting the windowsills with sensors. I was to be the cheese in the trap, but the trap was now a federal fortress. My role was to stop being a warrior and go back to being a victim. We need a channel, Fam said, speaking to me from a secure command van parked 2 blocks away. Someone in your old life who you know, 100%, will report back to Miles. I knew exactly who. Amanda Hayes, a mom friend from Riverbend. Our relationship built on the flimsy ground of PTA meetings and polite driveway chats. She was a gossip, terrified of irrelevance and hopelessly drawn to the power Miles projected. I called her from the payphone at the corner. As instructed, I let my voice crack. I manufactured the tears I no longer felt. Amanda, I don't know what to do. Ilara, oh my God, where are you? I'm in Beacon, at some old bookstore my grandmother left me. It's awful. I choked out a sob. He cut me off from everything. I have no money. I tried to enroll Leo in school, and they said there's a hold on his account. I'm scared. Amanda, I'm so scared he's going to try and take Leo. Her cooing, sympathetic noises were perfectly predictable. Oh, Ilara, that is just awful. I'm sure it's a misunderstanding. Miles is a good man. Let me just talk to him. As a friend, I'm sure I can clear this up. I thanked her, hung up, and walked back to the apartment. The bait was in the water. It took less than 6 hours. My unsecured cell phone, the one Miles had certainly been tracking, rang. Ilara? His voice was a slick performance of concern. I just got off the phone with Amanda. I am so sorry. I had no idea you were in. Such a bad situation. Miles, please, I whispered, following the script. It's freezing here. I just want what's best for Leo. I don't know what to do. I know. And this whole thing has gotten out of hand, he said, the generous benefactor. Look, I'm prepared to help. I'll give you a stipend, enough to find a decent apartment, get you back on your feet. The relief I flooded into my voice was pure theater. Thank you. Oh God, Miles, thank you. However, he said, and there it was, the steal. We have to be realistic about our son. This environment, your instability, it's not good for him. Sarah and we can provide the stability he needs. The home he deserves. You want full custody? I'm taking full custody. Ilara, this is the civilized way to do it. I'll have the papers drawn up. You sign them, and I'll give you the first check. When? Let's meet. That little diner on Route 9. Tomorrow. Noon. We can sign, and this can all be over. I looked directly at the pinhole camera in the light fixture. Fam's voice was a flat command in my invisible earpiece. Agreed. Okay. Miles, I whispered. Tomorrow. That night, as I sat in the dark, monitored apartment, the world outside exploded. At 9:00 p.m., Jackson Cole published his story. It was the first surgical cut. Ethelred Capital implicated in senatorial bribe. The headline blared across the web. It was the audio file, transcribed, analyzed, and corroborated by Iris's 2 years of groundwork. Fam's team had active wiretaps on Ethelred's leadership, and we listened to the panic in real time. The first call was the CEO, Sarah's father, screaming at his legal team. The second call was to Miles. It's her! The CEO roared, his cultured voice gone, replaced by a raw, animal panic. It has to be the wife. She found it. She found what that old bitch left behind. That's impossible, Miles insisted, but his voice was thin. She's broken. She has nothing. I'm seeing her tomorrow to get the custody papers signed. She's desperate. I don't care about the papers, the CEO shrieked. She's a leak. You were supposed to handle this. You were supposed to clean up this mess. Get to that bookstore, now, tonight. Tear it apart. Find whatever else she has and destroy it. But the meeting... Forget the meeting. Fix this. The line went dead. A new call immediately lit up. Sarah, to Miles. Her voice was not panicked. It was cold, sharp, and full of jealous rage. You're going to see her, she hissed. It's what we planned, Sarah, to get the custody papers, to finalize this. You're lying, she spat. She's pulling you back in. You're weak. She's playing you and you're too stupid to see it. I knew I should have handled this myself. She hung up on him. A new tension filled the command van. She's going off script, Fam said. She doesn't trust him to get it done. What is she doing? I asked. Fam was already listening to another feed. She's not calling Miles back. She's calling a burner, a known enforcer her family keeps on retainer. She's not waiting for Miles. She's sending her own cleaner. We waited. The apartment was a silent stage. The agents in the van across the street were shadows, their binoculars trained on the shop's front door. Leo and I were miles away, in a federal safe house, but my entire soul was in that dark, mildewed room. At 2:30 in the morning, a man in dark clothes moved through the alley. He picked the front door lock in under 10 seconds. He's in, the tactical leader whispered over the comms. Take him, Fam ordered. It was over before it began. 3 agents, moving like ghosts, were through the door. We heard a muffled thump, a sharp exhale, and then, suspect in custody. He's secure. Search him, Fam said. He's clean. No, wait, the agent said. He has no weapons, no tools. He's got something in his jacket, a medical kit. There was a pause. The silence crackled. Sir, the agent's voice came back, stripped of all calm. It's a syringe, full, and a small vial of clear liquid. We also have a note. It's a suicide note. It's signed Elara Vaughn. I felt the blood drain from my face. She wasn't sending him to find evidence. She was sending him to plant a body. My body. Fam's voice was iron. Run a field test on that liquid. Now. The weight was suffocating. Test is positive, the agent reported. High-purity fentanyl. It's a hot shot, enough to kill a horse. Fam looked at me, his face a mask of cold fury. They're done playing, Mrs. Vaughn. This just moved from financial crimes to conspiracy to commit murder. The vial of fentanyl changed everything. The attempted murder charge was the key that unlocked David Fam's entire arsenal. He no longer had to build a subtle RICO case. He had an active, provable conspiracy to commit murder. All jurisdictional barriers evaporated. All requests were expedited. The dominoes were set. We go now, Fam said, his voice flat and cold in the command van. We hit them all, simultaneously. The operation was a masterpiece of federal coordination. It began at 9:00 a.m., the first domino. The glass-walled boardroom on the 61st floor of the Ethelred Capitol building. Sarah's father, the CEO, was in a meeting about managing the narrative of Jackson Cole's initial article. He was mid-sentence, dismissing the reporter as a nuisance, when the tempered glass doors to the boardroom burst open. It wasn't a quiet knock. It was a battering ram. FBI agents in tactical gear flooded the room, their weapons low and ready. Randolph Harriman. One agent shouted, "You are under arrest." The CEO's face, a mask of privileged indignation, simply crumpled as the steel handcuffs clicked shut around his wrists. Agents were already descending on the server room, seizing everything. The second domino. At precisely the same moment, Jackson Cole hit publish. This was not a minor story. This was the bombshell. The Black Ledger, Ethelred Capital's decades of crime, corruption, and murder. It contained the verified documents from Iris's drive, the bribes, the money laundering, the illegal funding, the disappearance of the financial analyst, and the just unsealed warrant for conspiracy to commit murder. The market, which had been concerned by the first article, now entered a free fall. Ethelred's unlisted funds were frozen by federal order, and its public-facing partners saw their own stock values evaporate in minutes. The empire was collapsing in real time. The third domino Riverbend Elementary School. The final bell had just rung. Sarah Croft, still projecting the image of the serene, expectant mother, the fake pregnancy bump perfectly positioned under her cashmere sweater, was tidying her desk. She looked up, annoyed, as two quiet, plain-clothed individuals entered her classroom. A man and a woman. "Ms. Croft?" the woman asked. "I'm just finishing up," Sarah said dismissively. "Parent meetings." "You'll have to reschedule," the woman said, holding up a badge. "Sarah Harriman Croft, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, wire fraud, and violations of the RICO Act." Sarah actually laughed. A short, sharp, disbelieving sound. "You can't be serious. You have no idea who I am." "We know exactly who you are," the male agent said, his voice void of emotion as he cuffed her hands behind her back. "You're the woman who ordered a lethal dose of fentanyl to be delivered to Elara Vaughn." The color drained from her face. The arrogance, the generational certainty of being untouchable, shattered. She was just another criminal being led away in handcuffs as the last of the school buses pulled away from the curb, miles away, in a sterile, government-leased apartment. I watched it all on a muted television screen with Leo. I saw the footage of the Ethelred building, the breaking news chyron with Sarah's father's face. Leo was on the floor, building a tower with new wooden blocks, blissfully unaware that his world was being rebuilt from the ground up. The trap was set. The dragons had been slain. All that was left was the snake. The meeting at the diner was still on. Noon. Miles had not been part of the initial sweep. He was the final piece. I sat in the same cracked vinyl booth where I had met David Pham. This time, however, I was not a desperate, skeptical refugee. I was the bait, and I was wired for sound. Pham and a team of federal agents were in the kitchen, dressed as cooks and waiters. At 12:05, Miles walked in. He was wearing his $1,000 suit, his smile polished, his confidence radiating. He had no idea. He was completely, beautifully ignorant of the fact that his entire world had been incinerated in the last 3 hours. "Alara," he said, sliding into the booth. He sounded relieved. "I'm glad you're being sensible." "Miles." He didn't waste time. He pulled 2 items from his briefcase, a set of legal documents and a bank check. He slid them across the table. "This is it. You sign the papers. Full custody of Leo reverts to me. In exchange." He tapped the check. $5,000, a first installment. You'll get the same amount every month. Enough to live on. Start fresh. It's generous. Ilara, more than generous. I looked at the check. $5,000, the price he was paying for my son. I pushed the papers back toward him. "It's not enough." He sighed, the mask of the generous husband replaced by the annoyed executive. "Don't be difficult. This is the only deal on the table. Take it, or I'll just let the courts declare you unstable and I'll get him anyway. This is your only soft landing." I looked up from the check and met his eyes. My voice was calm, clear, and projected perfectly for the microphones. "The money you skimmed from the Cayman Fund. Miles. The one Ethelred doesn't know about. $14 million. I think that is worth more than $5,000 a month." The blood did not drain from his face. It vanished. His polished, handsome features turned a waxy, pale gray. The smile, the confidence, the arrogance, it all dissolved in an instant of pure, stark terror. He knew. In that 1 second, he knew that I knew everything, not just about Sarah, but about his own private betrayal. He didn't speak. He just moved. He scrambled out of the booth, his eyes darting to the door, a trapped animal looking for an escape. He knocked over his water glass. "Going somewhere." "Miles." David Pham and 2 agents stepped out from the kitchen doorway, blocking his path. Pham was holding a set of handcuffs. "Miles Vaughn," Pham said, his voice booming in the small diner. "You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, wire fraud, and embezzlement." Miles looked from Pham to me and back to Pham. The realization that he had not just been caught, but that he had been comprehensively, totally outplayed, broke him. He simply deflated, putting his hands behind his back as the final set of handcuffs clicked shut. 3 weeks later, I sat in another interrogation room. This one was in the federal building. The coffee was hot, and I was on the right side of the glass. I was a witness, not a suspect. David Pham entered, his suit jacket off, his sleeves rolled up. "She wants a deal," he said, not bothering with pleasantries. "She's trying to trade. She's agreed to see you." The door opened, and they led Sarah Croft in. She was a different person. Without the prosthetic 9-month belly, she was slight, diminished. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by an ill-fitting orange jumpsuit. The mask of the serene educator had been traded for one of desperate, theatrical victimhood. The moment she saw me, the tears began. They were oily, practiced. "Ilara, you have to help me," she sobbed, her cuffed hands rattling on the metal table. "It was never supposed to be this way. It was my father. He is a monster. He forced me into all of it," she cried, her gaze flicking between me and Pham, checking if the performance was landing. "And Miles. He manipulated me. He used my love for him. He twisted everything. I just wanted a family. I just wanted what you had." I said nothing. I just watched her. I let the silence in the room stretch out, heavy and cold. I let her performance hang in the air, unsupported. "Please," she whispered. the tears drying up, her eyes narrowing. Tell them I was just a pawn. I leaned forward. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the room like a scalpel. Grandmother Iris didn't fall? Sarah's face twitched. What? Of course she did. It was a horrible, tragic accident. Everyone knows that. I'm not talking about the accident that was reported, I said. I'm talking about the argument you had with her the day before, the one at the top of the stairs. Her face went white. I looked at David Pham. I kept one thing back, I said. I apologize. I needed it for her. I slid a tiny micro SD card across the table. My grandmother was a secretary for 30 years. She was paranoid and she was meticulous. She didn't trust anyone, least of all your family. When I was cleaning the apartment, I found it. A tiny nanny cam tucked into a stack of old encyclopedias. It was aimed perfectly at the stairwell. Pham nodded. He already had the file. He stood up. Your defense is noted, Ms. Croft. Wait here. He left us in the room. Sarah stared at me, the mask of the victim dissolving into pure, unadulterated hatred. In the adjacent observation room, Miles Vaughn was about to sign the deal of his life. His lawyer was beaming. Miles would testify against the Harriman family's financial crimes, plead guilty to embezzlement, and in return, he'd get a reduced sentence, maybe 5 years, with parole. He was ready to bury Sarah and her father to save himself. David Pham entered that room. Before you sign, Mr. Vaughn, Pham said, I think you should see this. A small glimpse into the character of your new partner. Pham turned on a large monitor. The footage was grainy, the audio thin, but it was clear. There was Iris, holding a file. There was Sarah, her face contorted in rage. I will not let an old woman ruin this, Sarah screamed. You are a fool, child. Iris's thin voice shot back. He is using you. I will expose all of you. Sarah lunged for the file. Iris pulled it back. And then, in a flash of raw, unrestrained fury, Sarah put her hands on my grandmother's chest and shoved. It was not a stumble. It was a violent, deliberate push. Iris went backward, her arms flailing. A small cry caught in her throat. She disappeared from the frame. We heard the sickening final thud from the bottom of the stairs. Sarah stood at the top, breathing hard. She didn't call for help. She didn't run down to check. She just stood there, watching. She smoothed her hair, straightened her skirt, and then calmly walked out of the camera's view. Miles stared at the screen. The blood drained from his face. He wasn't just seeing a murder. He was seeing his own future. This was not a woman manipulated by love. This was a predator. This was the woman who had ordered a syringe of fentanyl to end me. He realized, with chilling certainty, that she would never let him testify. He was a loose end. His plea deal wasn't a lifeline. It was a death sentence. She, he stammered, his body beginning to tremble. He looked at Pham, his eyes wide with a terror I had never seen in him. She killed her. She actually... Oh my God! He grabbed the pen. I'll tell you everything, he said, his voice cracking. Not just the money. Everything. The analyst she had disappear. The Project Alara meetings. Everything. I'll testify to all of it. Just keep her away from me. Please. His confession was the final blow. It destroyed Sarah's defense, corroborated the video, and buried her under a mountain of evidence. She was charged with first-degree murder. I got my son back. The federal government, armed with Iris's ledger and Miles's desperate, all-encompassing testimony, seized every asset Ethelred Capital had. That included the secret, $14 million fund Miles had been building. As part of my restitution and the federal whistleblower reward, a significant portion of that money was transferred to me. I went back to Beacon. I looked at the dark, crumbling bookstore, but I didn't see a graveyard. I saw a fortress. I used the money to bring it back to life. I hired contractors. I fixed the busted pipes and the non-existent heating. I sanded the old floors and replaced the broken windows. 6 months later, the scribe's nook reopened. It was no longer dark. It was bright, the air warm and smelling of coffee and new paper. It was a free library, a community center, and a safe haven. My grandmother had left me a box of secrets, and I had turned it into a sanctuary for truth. Thank you for listening. Comment below and let us know where you are listening from. Let's connect and share our thoughts. Please subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories, like this video, and give it an extra boost by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by more people.